everybody. Thank you for coming out on a Wednesday night, and thank you to Malvern Books for hosting another conversation that I get to have with an amazing artist. With me tonight is Usha Akella. Usha Akella has authored 4 books of poetry and 1 chapbook, and has scripted and produced 1 musical drama. Her latest poetry book was published by Sahitya Akademi, India's highest literary authority, in 2019. She recently earned a 2018 Master's in Creative Writing from Cambridge University, and her work has been included in the Harper Anthology of Indian English Poets. She was selected as a creative ambassador for the City of Austin for 2019 and 2015, and has been published in numerous literary journals. She is the founder of Matwaala, the first South Asian Diaspora Poets Festival in the U.S. She has won literary prizes, the Nazim Hikmet Award, Open Road Review Prize, and Egan Memorial Prize, and earned finalist status in a few U.S.-based contests. And she has also written a few quixotic nonfiction prose pieces published in the Statesman and India Currents. She is the founder of the Poetry Caravan in New York and Austin, which takes poetry readings to the disadvantaged in women's shelters, senior homes, and hospitals. Several hundreds of readings have reached these venues via this medium. Please welcome Usha Akella. So Usha's going to start by reading one of her poems, one of my favorite poems by her, and then we're going to talk a little bit, but she's going to stop and read throughout our talk. So,
thank you, Chaitanya. That was very warm and very welcoming. And so we'll just, I guess, dig right into it. And this poem is called Ordinary. This face, the day, the killing of children washing up on shores, the rape of women, the power race, the food on the table, the gargantuan piles of Granny Smiths, Bartlett pears, Haas avocados, Alaskan cruises, museums, opera, the onomatopoeia of psychosis, yoga mats, yoga bandanas, yoga water, the Mary Jane stilettos, gold embossed slippers, Zardozi, palazzo pants, antline, Nordstrom, winter storms, the travel abroad, whatever you can afford, whatever's mine. The destination wedding, the destination, the divorce post-wedding, the vows and semi-vows, love contracted, renewed and voided, the tabloids of expose and celebrities, panty flashing, Kim Kardashian's clothes, barely there, bottomly fair, Nicki Minaj's Another Day, Another Sleigh, and Angelina's adoptions, what Caitlyn Jenner Bruce wore to dinner, who's an angel, who's a sinner, what Amy Winehouse drank before she sang, and if Britney snores, let's hear more. Karina's expecting, Ranveer's grieving, Sonu's on a world tour. Who's that new thing, who's an angel, who's a whore, who wears what thong, who's exciting, who's a bore, ding dong, and a nip and a tuck and a fuck and a suck. Bieber's doing things, you know, look at that glow. Selena's crying and growing up fast, oh gosh, nothing lasts but flash bulbs and paparazzi. And the men from Mars, the women from Venus, the men from Venus and the women from Mars, riding their glitzy cars. Our consumption, the hungers, dinners, outlet malls, tea parties, the things in stores, the greed for this, the greed for that, to own all you own and find that one-eyed cat, the greed for other countries and the moon, and the young things want other things too soon. The slums of ripped kids with big black eyes, and our indignation, speedy deliveries via C-sections, 2 orders of McDonald's French fries, please, ordinary, theme parties, the shopping, the spending, the things that eat us, like tuition, aging parents, culture, and identity. Find your fat-free solutions via pill popping in the farm industry. Who's that woman crying on her closet floor? Open the door, open the door. the medical surgeries, the transplants, the man who gave birth to his brother, the 50 shades of cancer and pleasure. In your kitchen, the display of exotic plants, Ebola, ischemic stroke, COPD, colon cancer, HIV, diabetes, TB, a new epidemic, aren't you doped? The Ray-Bans, Gucci, Vera Bradley, Ordinary's Facebook's 5 minutes of fame, Twitter and YouTube, WhatsApp, Tumblr, plastic boobs, Snapchat, Instagram, Kik, Pinterest, blogs, iPhone selfies, Verizon, Androids, Blackberries, God, aren't we merry in our one world nation? Kindle chats and e-live your best, clean your desk, let it go, chill out, learn to flow, don't come knocking at my door. I smile, I've imported my kitchen tiles. What's in and what's out, the swirl in your head as you tumble about. The rabbits worry time is running out. Breaking news, subscriptions, serial killing, school shootings, millions of views, deportations, GOP nominees. Trump wanted the vacant chair. Is he crowned by Miss Universes in evening gowns? The talent in reality shows, the singing voices, the violent prodigies, magicians, contortionists, the politicians, blood-sucking cops, vampire heroes in movies, and the day rising with the sun and the night dying with the light. Move on, put up your fight. Decomposing bodies in civil wars, globalism, the books lining shelves in stores, the UN forces raping and creating other wars, and fathers raping their daughters and brothers booting out their sisters. You're turning away, why don't you roar? Rising Kundalini, Isha, Ashtang Yoga, the peddling of the East and the West, who's sitting in whose cultural nest? Galactic Federation, Saint Germain, Maitreya, Upanayanams, shamans, Bible studies and bar mitzvahs, crystal balls, cartomancy, tarot, Celtic tunes, I Ching, oils, aromas, feng shui, theosophy. The gods are giving us many boons. You got to be LinkedIn, are you lonely? Pendulums, chalices, runes, crosses, new age lunacy, hoodies, gravity and teas. See you somewhere sometime soon. MLK Day, Labor Day, Independence Day, Hallmark days for this and that, your dog's vasectomy, the 40th birthday of your cat. The stripes or the stars on the flags and the soldiers dead on mats or in boxes with crosses on the lids. It's just about what you and I did, it's just ordinary. Don't flip or wake up Sid. Ordinary, the op-eds and newspapers, on, world and business, readers' opinions, tech and science, books and theater, education, who's alive, who's dead, who's got a gun to his head, health, sports, art, style, food, travel and real estate, and knowingly, astrology will predict your fate. Have you tasted figs spread on age breed, tasted the yogis, the bogies, agoras and kundalini? Please do try, hurry, hurry, hurry. What's behind the walls in Abu Ghraib? Famines, forest fires, oil spills, earthquakes, cyclones, hurricanes, nature's hammer sense. Look up, there's the Virgin mourning in a blue dress, soaked with blood, who's telling the truth or a fib. Do you hear Kali's anklets jingling sounds as she dances on continents like a cremation ground? Who's got the loss, who's got the gain, no matter. There's a jaguar in your garage even though you're stained. UFO sightings, pyramids, deep sea creatures, all ordinary as ordinary can be. Don't forget the shows realer than reality. Stars starring in their own obituaries, the gang rapes, narcotics, the hungry still hungry. September 11th, the match-fixing, peddling women's bodies, the sex toys, beauty pageants, and the Illuminati. Ceasefires, violations, gay rights, abortion, top news stories, the lonely still lonely, shopping and anthropology. What perfume are you wearing, please? Shoot or be shot by the jihadis, it's all for our children's ease. The whole monster of living and dying daily, dying and living. Stand up and tell me you're alive, please.
It's a breathtaking poem, and I mean, it's like in these few pages, you're capturing this this modern world that we live in and how we are just constantly moving through it, getting all these images. Can you talk a little bit about the journey of that poem, when it started, and how did you cull some of these images and put them together? And
I think it took me a long time to write it, and I wanted to write a kind of poem like that for a long time.
and can everybody hear?
Do you want to move up maybe a bit closer?
You might want to move up closer if you're having trouble hearing.
Yeah,
And we'll try to speak up.
I'll try to talk a little louder. I don't have very loud voice. So, yeah, it took me a long time to write this poem. I've been wanting to write a poem like that for a long time because I think we're living in extremely schizophrenic and crazy times. Social media has altered our reality completely. And we're all living through this every second while trying to raise children and trying to be halfway decent human beings. And it was a challenge too. You know, poetry has this incredible ability to be telescopic or microscopic. It can pull in or pull out. And I wanted to see what it would be to write a poem with a kind of a bird's view on just this entire schizophrenic. So that's why it's like a montage poem. There are multiple voices where suddenly we don't know really who's speaking in the poem, where you have someone just directly saying, someone, are you living, are you dying, stand up please, or have you tasted fig and brie, or whatever. So even I think the composition of the poem, even in terms of voice, was schizophrenic. So that was kind of the attempt. I don't know if it's successful. And I deliberately play with the format of lists, because I think our lives are so list dominated. You know, we wake up in the morning and it's what to do. You know, we have our to-do list for the week, for the hour, and they never end. They just go on, and it seems like the earth has its to-do lists on this very large level, and it's all just dumped in there like a potpourri. So that's what I was trying to do.
And how long did it take you?
I think I waited a long time, and then it dumped, came like a dump. And then, of course, the act of writing poetry, there is the editing phase, and for me, sound is very important. It's one of the key factors in my poetics. Mm-hmm. So I probably rearranged, looked for ways to create internal rhyme, to create some kind of echoes within the poem, and that was the second and the third writer. Yeah.
You just gave a keynote at a really interesting conference, it sounded like. Can you tell us a little bit about where you were and what these people were trying to do?
Well, the name of the organization is TLAN. It's abbreviated for Transformative Language Arts Network, and the conference was The Power of Words. It was incredibly, I came back very rejuvenated. I mean, after you write poems like that, you need signs of hope. And I think that conference really gave me a lot of hope for the planet. There were doctors, there were storytellers, there were a few writers, theater people from the theater field, and the whole focus of the conference was on healing and transformation through the written and performance word. So the doctors, for example, were looking into other modalities to bring into their fields. So, for example, there was a natal neurologist who was just incredible. He takes his guitar into where the babies are then incubated, and he goes there and he plays for them. And he's trying to integrate all these optional ways of healing into mainstream. And I felt so much of it was very humbling, and I felt so much of respect because these are individuals trying to change the mainstream practice of their disciplines. And it was incredibly heartening to be there and to see so
I love that image in the poem of the Miss Universes crowning Trump in their evening gowns. And, you know, I think about this constantly. You know, for the last 3 years, this is why I started an interview series here called Borderless. Why do we write? Why does it matter? What impact does it have in the world? And I mean, I think that's a good example. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on that in general. But also, you seem to be very take your job as a poet in the world very seriously, and you're sort of a poetic citizen or a citizen poet, and you launched these initiatives like the Poetry Caravan. Can you talk a little bit about that, and what kind of responses do you get in like a homeless shelter, or places where you don't expect to see poetry and people are struggling, whatever?
Well, the two initiatives I've kind of poured myself into are Matwaala, which is the more recent one, and that's the South Asian Poetry Festival. And the Poetry Caravan I started in 2005 when I lived in the New York area. And what struck me was people like us who can go out and catch a reading or go to a bookstore and buy a shop is not the norm for everyone. There are people who are hospitalized, are in senior homes, and cannot just afford to go out and enjoy the theater, or they're bedridden or whatever. So I came upon the idea, why don't we take the arts to them? Why don't we take poetry to them? So that was really at the heart of it. And we launched it under the town of Greenberg, and I left a couple of years later. I worked really hard for a year to take it off the ground, and I believe it continued as a collective, and maybe 1,100 or 1,200 free readings have gone to hospitals, senior homes, and women's shelters. I was going to go into prisons at that point, but we had moved, and we moved down here. Then travel came and studies and this and that. So we did start the Poetry Caravan in Austin, but I couldn't sustain it for too long. We ran it for about a year, and we went to senior homes. And every time I'm on site, whatever the kind of venue we're going into, under that umbrella of disadvantage, I always come back very, very certain that it has to continue as a project. Sometimes when you're burnt out and you're wondering, is there a point to something, you're on site and you realize it is wonderful. When you see seniors who have Parkinson's, and we did a few writing workshops too, and they will still try to hold a pen, or they say 20 years ago I wrote poetry, and they bring out a book. It's very, very validating that the work is needed. Well, regarding Matwaala, this we started in 2015, and actually Dr. Singh is here, who gave us the name. He's one of our senior scholars in the country, and Matwaala roughly means intoxicated, and a free soul. And again, it was the same concerns. When I talked to poet friends, it always seemed that poetry is like a gated, kind of a gated community, and we didn't have the code to kind of enter. We noticed that progress as a South Asian poet, or as a minority poet, as a non-white poet, it seemed that progress could happen to a certain extent. And we all had certain stories that were bruising, that were a bit wounding, where you can't prove racism, but you experience it. You experience being excluded. You experience not being able to make, not being able to go to, say, upper tier journals, or even admission into or teaching jobs or whatever. Everyone seemed to have some story where it was can't prove it but have been wounded kind of a story. So the unease just started growing, and I guess when it grows too much, you just realize you cannot sit back. So I said, why don't we start a South Asian festival to increase the visibility of South Asian poets? And we had the first one in Austin, and consequently the next three were hosted out of New York City, and next year is going to be again in New York City because we've got a fund from Stony Brook. And I think again, when I look at statistics, and when I see the work when we do it, I'm very sure we have to go on. So for example, this year, the way I've structured it is I tie up with educational institutions, because in the end I really want to affect canon. I want to affect what people are reading at universities, what the youth and what kids are reading in their textbooks. Now, if you're not represented in the canon, you're not represented in anthologies, then how do you become visible as an American poet? So my co-director, and I have to salute her, I could not do any of this without her, a poet called Pramila Venkateshwaran. We started Community College, because Pramila has more power there, she engages students to come and read. She will put out South Asian poetry books, and we have a session where they're reading poems by South Asian poets. So one year we had like a feminist reading at the Blue Stockings feminist store. So we are trying our best to do this. I think we eventually will become a publishing house. We started off with an e-anthology this year. That was our beginning. We want to become a publishing house, and we want to continue with the festival. I think we're at that edge where we have to make the decision whether to become non-profit or just remain the way we are. But non-profit means lots of headaches, which I don't think I'm really ready to take on. I'm terrible at bookkeeping and accounting and all of that. And so maybe some rich philanthropist who loves literature will come across and just give us $10,000
in this room,
and we can try to invite more poets and try to just give them airfare and hotel and all of that. So we need resources to do more good.
Can you tell people what that website is?
www.matwaala.com, which is matwaala.com. Oh, so so going back to the conference, I did a keynote on Matwaala. That was what it was.
Can we hear some more of your poems?
All right. I think today seems to be kind of the evening for a lot of activist, feminist kind of work. I'm going to read a shorter poem. It's called Enough. People, let us say it. Bring back our caged children to a field of sunflowers. Open our land to people as we would our palms to catch a raindrop. Bring back Alan in blue shorts, washed up as a fish snuggled in sand. Let us not say again he did not make it. Let children not have to tell their stories. Let us bring back Gulsoma, 7 years old, oil her back scarred like a cluster of sardines. Let us hear her laughter before it was married. Let Malala not be shot in the head. Let Carla not have to say 43,200 times raped. And bring back Asifa Bano's rosy cheeks and chirping. Let her bring back goats barefooted and roast warm chestnuts on a humble fire. Let her 8-year-old legs not be parted brutally for things other than what children do. And bring back all the murdered girl infants still as stone, swaddled in earth. And the police, traffickers, abductors, mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers who kill, sell, abuse, rape, shoot their own. Let us hang them as rotting fruit from trees. And people, we who know too much with our tentacles of knowing, like octopuses with many eyes, how much of knowing do we need before we say it?
So that one that's a new poem to me, so it's a lot to absorb. But it strikes me that there's something about poetry where you can speak more to the urgency of a situation, and I'm mainly a novelist, and I wish I was a poet, because I feel like there are things that need to be, one, like consumed more quickly than a novel. And also, I know that you take a long time to write your poems, and I'm not saying that poems are written in an instant, but there's something that lends itself when times feel very urgent, as they do now. But I know that you do write in other forms also, and you were in this MFA program at Cambridge where you started writing short stories, and you write some prose. Can you talk a little bit about how you decide which genre you're going to be writing in?
I think I'll always be a poet, primarily. I think there's something about that form that will never leave me. But I think what comes easier to a poet, genre-wise, is creative nonfiction. And I think short stories are the next step, but creative nonfiction is the easiest, I think, prose form to kind of ease into. So I do that from time to time. I've written travel articles and a few creative nonfiction pieces. And one just came out few days ago. So I'm enjoying that process. I think, it's interesting what you say about poetry as a short story writer. I've always felt poets are lazy fiction writers. We just don't have the stamina, maybe, and the endurance and the staying power to do what you do. So a lot of admiration for your genre. But that's, I think, what I'm doing now. I think I was petrified to write a short story. I just had no grasp of the form. I had no grasp of the components. Of course, I knew it theoretically off paper, but I just didn't know how to break in. So Cambridge was good, the way it was designed. We had to do writing in every genre. So I wrote my first short story, and at least, the kind of the fears come down. And I wouldn't mind trying it again. And I probably will. But
I'd like to ask you a little bit about the craft of poetry, and then I think we can maybe hear some more poetry and then open it up to the audience. But one is that I'm actually not trained in reading poetry. I was not an English major in college, and I know what I like. It's sort of instinctual, and it's very much for me on it's all sensory, like how it sounds, the rhythm, the imagery. A lot of it for me is about musicality. What do you look for in a poem? How do you know that a poem is speaking to you?
I think you've listed some of the things that matter to me a lot, which is the oral power of the poem. I'm also, musicality is very, very important. I think musicality is what distinguishes prose from poetry. If I had to name one thing, it is musicality for me personally. I love metaphor, and I think for various reasons, but that's very important to me. And I think it has to touch you. I think that is, when we're reading a novel or a short story, I think analysis or a poem, analysis comes in much later with art. You look at a painting instinctively, you either fall into I like it or I don't like it. The analysis can come in later, and then you say, okay, there's perspective and the color combinations and whatever, it's so realistic, and you bring in all the theory and all of that later. But instinctively, I think art first has to touch you. And as layman and as simple as that might be, I think that's still very, very important for me too.
Well, I'm glad you said metaphor. I really struggle with metaphor. I mean, you have it. A good writer should be able to do it. But I picked out one of the lines from one of your poems where I just read it and I was like, I don't know why it's so appropriate. Why did I never come up with this? But it's so unique. You have a line, look at Manhattan trying to maul the sky with its greedy fingers. And I want to know how you come up with something like that.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. It's metaphor making, image making. When I teach creative writing to students, what I tell parents is, you cannot give talent. I mean, you can take as many classes as you want, but the one thing I cannot give your child is talent. Talent is, I think it's important. I think the equivalent is, you can give someone a voice, but you can train a voice and unfold the potentiality of that voice. I think the same thing applies to writers too. And that's not to say that I'm making a demarcation that one is a born genius. No, it's not that. But for example, if I gave everyone here a topic, if I said, let's write a poem about snow, and what each of you writes is going to be completely different from each other, and that has a lot of that, and that's because art is so individual. It's your life experiences. It's these neural networks that can make these jumps from the most unconnected things and then just slam them together and come up with a metaphor. Now that you cannot get even from an MFA in Cambridge. I mean, Cambridge didn't give me that. Cambridge taught me other things. But that, those syntactic ability to make connections, which is very primary for a poet, like metaphor writing, that is just, I mean, it's a mystery. And I'm glad everything cannot be analyzed, because there'd be no mystery in the world if we were to analyze everything. So what is talent, or what is the imagination, or why are there degrees of difference in imagination from poet to poet? You'll never find the answer to that. So
I'm very glad that there are people who see the world in a way that the rest of us don't necessarily see right away. And I mean, that's why I love poetry. Like, I just feel like, okay, here's something I lived in New York. I looked at that skyline over and over again and thought, this is really special, but what's really going on with these lines and everything? And then you read something 20 years later and it opens up a whole new way of seeing that, or something that actually maybe like you felt inside but couldn't give voice to. So I'm very grateful for that. Thank you. Can we hear some more? Do you want to read from a book, or?
Yeah, maybe I'll read the poem that you like.
Yeah.
Please.
Yes.
That one.
There's a few in here that I like. Maybe do two. What page numbers?
Should I do the one you like, the morning sky?
Oh yeah. You'll hear the whole poem instead of just one line.
This poem is called Love Has Forgotten Herself. Love in New York City is stalking downtown bars with nasal drones and picking up partners for the night. Love is having a manicure in New York City, wearing black tights. She has just fitted herself with a diaphragm. Love is a drag queen, creature of the night, sexy in denial. Love is doing Ashtanga yoga and drinking wheat germ shake with papaya, or taking a 1-week vacation at Omega or the Himalayan Institute. Love is white fingers skillfully easing around chopsticks and chicken pad thai. Love is so multicultural on the outside and screaming neurotic on the inside. Love is jogging in Central Park and rapping and poetry slamming in coffee shops. Love is hip, sleek, black-trousered, coal-eyed, and has just edited a book on South Asian identity. Love is belting out hip-hop and chanting sister peace, at parades. Love has shaved her head and pierced her navel. Love is alternative, new age, and spiritual. Love lives with a lesbian kuchipudi dancer and music partner. Love is fighting to become mainstream. Love is a single mother crying for love at night and fortifying vulnerability with the pill. Oh yeah, love is so liberated and on the pill. Love's on the rebound from her 5th breakup this year. Her focus is to run every day, eat nutritious and fat-free, be well, keep together, remember that this is God's word and world, and cut down on her antidepressant by the end of the year. Love is falling apart at the center. Love is an ABCD culture vulture, a millionaire doctor in Armonk, a night jetter with an empty heart and easy smile. He's learned all the cues to get the babes, the hard talk. It's not the money, man, it's about art and people. And bottom pinches his friend's wife with a wink. Love remembers to be loved in the holiday season. Love's decided to file for separation on grounds of incompatibility. Love is aborting an unborn child. Love has become cattle in the pastures of others' wives' bodies, swooping vultures sniffing for the first smell of decay in a woman's soul. Love has forgotten who she is and how she must be. Look at Manhattan trying to maul the sky with its greedy fingers. I, it screams daily. I want, I desire.
Wow. I may ask you to read one more, but
Yeah, sure.
can you read Spilling Over?
From the same.
Or Spilling Over or Turning Every Corner. One is on page 19, the other one's on page 23. And then we'll have questions from the audience.
I haven't read turning every corner for you. I walked the streets, hearing you in the footsteps of strangers. I turned every corner to catch a glimpse of you. In the corners of every city in the world, in the chaos and romance of Chudi Bazaar, in the greeting and pulsating streets of New York City, the allure of Champs-Élysées, the tulip beds of Kokenhof, the dusky accents of Merida, the bold more lanes of Amsterdam, the arched mysteries of Cordoba, the smells of Chinatown, the cobbled history of Rome, the hilltop blessing of Pavagadh, the eternal gaze of Krishna and Guruvayur, the utter desolateness of Betamchela, the passageway to Mahakali in Raniganj, Baltimore's wharves, the mountainous solitude of Sandia. Every corner I turned for you. Every corner I turned, the earth turned in upheaval. This I have done over lifetimes as you play hide and seek. This I will do till scavengers tear my heart out, and when they do, they will have to eat your name, not mine.
Does anyone have a question or comment?
You said sound is really important to you in your poetry, especially. Do you read your poems out loud as you're writing them?
I do.
As part of the writing process?
I do. Actually, I think after the first draft, that's when I start reading aloud, and then I start tweaking with sound. And my ear guides me a lot at that point.
For parents who have kids, how do you get the kids to appreciate more poetry?
I think just the nursery rhymes, the most basic forms of poems that they're exposed to is just the beginning, because all of those have rhythm, they have sound, and we come from the South Asian background, and you play so many shlokas and mantras. Again, you're reinforcing patterns of rhythm, and they will become very unconscious later on.
I think I got trained in listening for the musicality in poems. My mother used to read to me from a Bengali book of poems called Abu Tamil. It's very famous, very weird, but yeah, I didn't understand most of the words actually. All I really got was the rhythm of it, and I loved it.
Was that Satyajit Ray's book? Which is very popular, right? He's got a...
Yeah, no, I don't. I think it's I think it's sort of an anthology. He may have had some hand in it, but any other?
How important is the visual of your poem? Like I love watching how people do line breaks and how they break poetry up on page. For you, because you were saying musicality and rhythm is very important, how does that translate the way it looks on a page?
It's very interesting that you asked me that question. Still waiting here.
Oh, yeah.
So this latest book, this is a book that took me completely by surprise by the way the words appear on the page, every page. And I practically didn't touch. I realized that the way they were being written was intrinsic to its meaning. And they just float. All these poems are just floating on the page, and they go so beautifully with what is happening. And this was a spiritual collection of poetry that came out of a couple of experiences as I had, and I wrote this. It's very strange the way it all came out, and it was almost, once the whole book was done, I knew I didn't have the right to touch the way it came out. And I'd never written being guided by the spatial dance of the words on the page. So yes, that's what happened with this latest thing, and it was very instinctive. And when I go back, it's kind of sacred. I feel I have no right to touch the way it just came through. So
does it change the way that you read it?
It was intrinsic to the heart of the poem and the meaning of the poems. So it was perfect.
So you just said that this book came out of certain experiences. Is that how most of your writing flows? Is that you need to have felt something,
You need to feel.
maybe not exactly what's written, but something that which made you go?
You need to feel. I think there's always a moment of inspiration. Now, whether that inspiration be an image, whether it be a simple phrase or just the last word of the poem or just ideational in the sense of a concept or a thought, there's that there's that mystery of the imagination where something pings, and it alerts you. There's a certain alert, and you know that you can take this and run. When you run with something, you also have to know when to discard something, because something may not have enough steam to take you all through. It might just collapse after half a phrase, and then you're faking it. The rest of you're struggling, and then it just doesn't come together. So it depends on that electric impulse. It has to take you forward, and that's the writing process that will tell you whether it's working or not. So,
Do you write every day?
I'm not what you find in the poetry the writing manuals that you wake up at 6, wake up at the same time and write every day. I should, but I don't.
Any other questions?
Who are your favorite poets, and could you tell me a little bit about your influences?
Sure. Very early on, the Romantics, Shelley, Keats, very much. Wordsworth. I had the chance to go to a couple of his homes this May. I went to the Lake District where I saw all this beautiful nature poetry, where it all came from. That was wonderful. And then when I was, I think, doing my undergrad in India, I read Khalil Gibran. I think that was my first exposure to Sufi poetry and spiritual poetry. And then after that there was T.S. Eliot, and T.S. Eliot caught my ear because of Musicality. So that seems to be something I'm looking for all the time. Then Rumi's poetry was, it's a long list, just a long list. There's so many of my contemporary South Asian Indian poets living here. I just love their work. I love Pramila Venkateshwaran. There's Ravi Shankar. I love his work. There's some really fine poets writing today. So I think we get inspired by many things, and many kinds of poets. And Yehuda Amichai, the Israeli poet, is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And then the counterpart is Mahmoud Darwish, who's a Palestinian poet. Now, two sides of the wall, and they're both incredibly beautiful poets. I love them.
As a poet, like every artist, like every human being who's doing something useful, you are making a contribution to the world. And I'm kind of curious about how you see what you are giving to the world. There's some, it could be, it's obvious. You can look at a surface and you can say, well, poets bring beauty to the world, they bring insight, etc. But I'm wondering if you feel that you have a particular role, if you feel you have a social responsibility, if you feel that you have, how do you want to touch the world through your craft?
I think from the perspective of the act of writing, when I was very young and I started to write, I never asked the question, what am I giving to the world? The need to create, the unconscious impulse to make something of this world and life in a medium that you choose, there's really no answer. It's mysterious. I keep coming back to the word mystery because there really are no answers. I think even when you become an established poet, you're someone who's been with your craft. In the act of writing, you do not ask that conscious question where you think you are giving something. You're only fulfilling that impulse for some reason. And in that making, if you have reflected something that is of consequence and that can touch someone's heart, then so be it. That happens. Now, regarding social obligation, yes. As a woman, for example, I will always read a woman-oriented, at least one poem wherever I am, because I think that's an obligation we have. We're a very bruised planet. There are terrible things happening to women and children, and my poetry, I think writing a socially conscious poem is as much spiritual as writing a Sufi poem. I do not see a break or a dichotomy, because we are in the world, we do have some responsibility of trying to do what we can. And as a poet, the only thing I can do is write a poem. You know, I'm not a politician. I do not have that kind of power. I do not have that kind of ability to affect law and so on. I could, as a citizen, take part in certain, local organizations, but that's a different thing. We're talking about the art for the how as a practicing poet does one. So this is the way I tackle it. I'm working on a feminist book right now. And my previous book, the book that came out, is purely spiritual. It will seem to actually oppose everything that I'm doing in the next book, because this is about complete surrender and annihilation and erasure. And the book I'm working on is all about a woman's voice and empowerment and redefining a woman's place in the world as it should, speaking for children. And I know it's been interesting that you asked this, because in the past I've had a couple of people who thought my writing this kind of poetry in some way was a betrayal of my spiritual poetry. And I'm glad I'm able to hold my ground and say, no, we are made of various strands. We are social beings, and we are spiritual beings, and all in between, and we can write a poem about anything. That's the brilliance about poetry. Its canvas is so wide, it can capture any strand of who or what we are, and nothing is in opposition to it, and we must not find opposition. Poetry, I think, tries to reconcile.
Well, I want you to join me in thanking please stick around, buy her books, browse, and I'm sure if you have more questions, you can come and ask Usha. But thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeff.